But folks, there's been a lot of talk last week. The news last week was how the president wasn't going to cooperate with the House's what I consider bogus impeachment investigation because they're not even allowing the Republicans to participate. There's a guy, Matt Gaetz, got kicked out of a judiciary committee, or not the judiciary because he's on judiciary, but he got kicked out of one of the committees, doing the impeachment inquiry. It's not very transparent. I wanted to bring back John O'Connor to the program. He served as an assistant U.S. attorney in Northern California from 74 to 79. He's written a book, Postgate, How the Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat, Covered Up Watergate, and Began Today's Partisan Advocacy Journalism. John O'Connor, welcome back, sir.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning to you. What are your thoughts about the news last week that the president said, hey, I'm not going to give you guys any documents because this impeachment inquiry is invalid?
Well, he's absolutely right, of course. If they want an impeachment inquiry, which I think would be bogus anyway, as you say, even if they did it the right way, they're clearly doing it the wrong way. When President Nixon and President Clinton were impeached, the Congress, realizing how important this political act is, reached out to make sure that they had the appearance of fairness. In this case, there's not even the slightest appearance of fairness. The Republicans, of course, have no ability to subpoena witnesses. It's not out in the open. Congressman Schiff is conducting this like a secret grand jury. Well, guess what? This is not a grand jury. But witnesses are shuttled in and out in secret. Why? Because they don't want, not only don't want their opponents to know, they don't want the American people to know. And, of course, then they'll leak things selectively to the public just to create this aura. Fact is, this is a big, very much of a partisan act, and it's just obvious, and it divides the country once more.
I know that your book deals with, Watergate, how it was covered up. I know the CIA was certainly a part of that, and now we have, the idea that a CIA whistleblower is never going to have to reveal their identity, but might take down the president of the United States. What do you make of that?
Well, this is just more of the same. Everything, and my book really says this. It's really where it all started. But think about what happened in the last few years. During an election, everybody's trying to make a big deal about this thing with the Ukraine, about how it'd be so terrible if we actually investigated someone who happened to be a candidate. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what happened 4 years ago? Our own intelligence agencies decided to investigate a candidate named Donald Trump. And it was clear anybody with an ounce of sense knew from the beginning that this so-called Russian collusion was nonsense. Now, maybe Brennan and the people in the agency got some kind of a tip that it might have been Russian disinformation that, Putin wants to help Trump. But after that, so that might have been legitimate. I don't know. But after that, it was clear that this was an intelligence agency entrapment. Mm-hmm. These people are being sent in to try to entrap Papadopoulos. They're doing that over in England because the CIA can conduct operations over there. But this whole thing was an illicit attempt by the intelligence agencies to bring down a candidate. And this is more of the same. They don't want to identify this guy, one of the whistleblowers from the CIA, because it's going to be a Brennan acolyte. It's just going to be more of the same. Watergate was about intelligence agency abuse. This is too, and this is they're essentially unregulated. And of course, our media. This is my real problem. When something like this happens, our media does not step up and tell the people what's true. Mm-hmm. There's more falsity. Like when you hear and you see the media say that there's absolutely no evidence that Biden did anything wrong.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's so frustrating to me. Continue.
first of all, who are the media to give us those conclusions? We're the citizens of the United States. Give us some facts and let us draw those conclusions.
Exactly. I mean, he's on tape. He's on tape saying he did. That's the evidence. I don't understand. I mean, I've heard that from. I drive into work early, so I mean, I'm listening to radio. I'm listening to mainstream news, and it's nonstop. The Trump campaign, Giuliani keeps saying, but there's no evidence to support it. I'm like, Joe Biden is on tape describing the crime. You know.
You've got a quid and you've got a quo. Now, was there a quid pro quo? Just as a former prosecutor, we call that evidence. It's circumstantial evidence. If I went out and paid a judge's daughter $1 million, a judge who was handling my case, gosh, somebody might think, and then the judge ended up ruling for me, somebody might think that's evidence for quid pro quo, especially if the judge's daughter had no talent and I wasn't paying her for anything. Now, people forget this, Joe. Everybody acts, and you're correct, that the act of firing the prosecutor was very much a quid pro quo. But people forget that they don't know because the media doesn't tell them. It was April 14th. Biden is already installed as the administration's point person on Ukraine to stop corruption, supposedly, clean it up. April 14th, the Brits go into court in London and impound $23 million from Burisma Holdings. Does anybody tell us that? No. I had to get that in a foreign newspaper. April 14th, 2014. April 18th, 2014, Burisma announces they're going to hire Hunter Biden. Isn't that amazing? And now, the London court now is waiting. All they're waiting for is some papers from Ukraine in order to complete the seizure. They impounded it, but they didn't give it back to Ukraine. They're just holding it. Okay. Ukraine never submitted the papers to the court that would allow the court to say, okay, here's the $23 million back, Ukraine. You want it? Why wouldn't Ukraine simply put up a doc? They could say anything they wanted, get the $23 million back. No, they didn't do it. That's the first quid pro quo. And, of course, there are others. And people, so it just drives me nuts. I've got the USA Today article from yesterday. I've got the Times article from the weekend. They're all basically covering up, and they are quoting people who are really in bed with the. This is so funny. They're in bed with the previous Russian regime there, and all these so-called anti-corruption people. George Soros' anti-corruption outfit is one of the ones that's there. James Comey put in his agent into one of the anti-corruption organizations. So guess what's happening there? And guess what has happened there? And it's real corruption, and yet all we get as citizens is, there's absolutely no evidence that the Bidens did anything wrong. Now, if you're a regular, elite person that thinks he or she is educated, you're in the coastal cities, you're going to read that and you're going to say, once again, Trump is a terrible person. This is a phony investigation. My God. It's in the American interest to work on Ukrainian corruption. I mean, Eric Holder and Joe Biden had press conferences saying that back in 2014. Now it's no longer when President Trump tries to do something about it, all of a sudden it's wrong. So this is an example, and I don't know that I need to preach to you about how our media is not giving us the facts and letting the democracy decide. And it's really, and luckily there are enough people out there that just don't buy it. What bothers me is there are a lot of people who do.
We're talking again with John O'Connor. His book, Postgate, How the Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat, Covered Up Watergate, and Began Today's Partisan Advocacy Journalism. Now, let me be honest, John. I am of the opinion at this point, I am definitely, this is a talk radio program. We talk about things that are, from the conservative side. I am a conservative. At this point, me admitting that's where you're going to hear that perspective. I think that's the new objectivism because I'm at least being honest with you. But advocacy journalism at this point is really on full display. So I'm really glad that I had you on today. Yesterday, James O'Keefe's videos about CNN came out, and so that's clearly, they're not objective. They're cloaking themselves in objectivity, but it's fake. But then he had, I don't know if you saw this, the ABC report about the bombing of a Syrian border town where they used footage, cropped the video, and it was actually from Knob Creek in West Point, Kentucky, from 2017, where they were, doing basically a gun show, an artillery show, and they tried to use that to attack the president. I mean, and that's not an oversight. That's not an accident. That was deliberate.
Well, yes. What bothers me about the CNN stuff coming out is the notion that the CNN is trying to appear objective. It's false objectivity. It's one thing if you're a conservative and you're going to say, okay, I'm a conservative. Here's my conservative opinion. There's nothing wrong with that because, number one, it's opinion and you're calling it opinion. And number two, you're telling people who you are. But that's not what happens in these mainstream media outlets. They pose as people who are objective. They pose as if they're just giving you the facts. So, we're just giving you the facts. It's proven that Biden did nothing wrong in Ukraine. That's just one example. But it's proven, and they present that to you as proven objective fact, and it is not. And that's where the real problem lay. And if these outlets put out the facts, and then when there's an opinion piece, they come out with their progressive opinions, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not what's happening, and that's where I think our democracy is being torn apart. It's really disguised, and what they're doing is they're getting everybody worked up. Here's my analogy, Joe. If I go to court every day, and there are 1 or 5 or 4 other lawyers that are there to call me on every misstatement I make, or if I make an omission, they let me know. There's a judge that doesn't let me state as fact that which is opinion. I have to put on an expert with opinion, but I can't, with a regular witness, come up with opinions. I'm hemmed in that way. But if I were able to go into court alone with no judge and just a jury, and I could do what the media does, the temptation is to just tell one side of things. And that's what we've got now. That's what we've got since 1972, since Watergate. We've got a media that says, gee, I'm going to go in and talk to the jury without anybody correcting me. And I know that none of my mainstream cohorts are going to correct me. And this is what happens. And that jury's getting inflamed. It's getting excited. It's really inciting mob rule. It's what the Founding Fathers were worried about, was mob rule. And right now, there's a good portion of the country that is trying to get us into mob rule. Think about that phony Russian investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing if there were good, solid witnesses there, even if they were lying, if they looked good. But you could tell right from the beginning that there were no witnesses there. That Joseph Mifsud was a Western intelligence agent. That Sergei Millian didn't know what he was talking about. That he was a joke. But that's what's happening. We're getting mob rule, and we almost got rid of a president. He was hanging on by his fingernails. If he would have, he gets upset with it, and if he got upset and did something that the mob would say was impeachable, was obstruction, he'd be out of there. And what bothers me is I'm not here to carry a brief for President Trump. I'm here against mob rule. I'm here for truth in democracy, for people giving facts to the jury of public opinion. We no longer have strong political parties where in the past at least the parties acted as some sort of a safeguard and so forth. We don't have those anymore. We have people we have our representatives going direct to the people. That's the more direct democracy. And the media is the megaphone that gets to those people. Thank God for shows like yours, is all I can say. Thank God.
Well,
that we don't have
going.
The fairness doctrine.
Yeah.
Thank God.
You're right. Well, John O'Connor, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for shedding some light on this. Appreciate your opinion, and I really, I think that this book of yours, again, Postgate, how the Washington Post betrayed Deep Throat, covered up Watergate, and began today's partisan advocacy journalism. I think it's a it's so applicable to what we're going through now. Like you said, it's the beginning of it then, and now we're really kind of in the middle of it all. And so I appreciate you writing the book, and I appreciate your time this morning, sir.
There's one thought, Joe, finish it. If we got rid of President Nixon through false journalism, guess what's happening today? Okay? That's my final thought.
Yeah.
Great talking to you.
Yeah.
Great
You
talking
too. You too, John.